All right, you have to hear this story. Picture a guy treating stocks from his childhood bedroom, still living with his parents. Now imagine that same guy helps trigger one of the most bizarre and frankly terrifying market collapses in history. It sounds like a movie, but it's the real story of the 2010 flash crash. So let's set the scene. The date is May 6th, 2010. And the US markets, they are already seriously on edge. Everyone's worried about the European debt crisis, and the VIX, the fear index, was already up over 22%. It was a tense day for sure, but absolutely no one saw what was about to happen. At 2:42 p.m. Eastern Time, literally 60 seconds after our bedroom trader decides to call it a day, the bottom just falls out of the market. It starts plummeting for no reason anyone can see. Down on the trading floor, it was pure chaos, total confusion, perfectly summed up by one trader just shouting, "What the heck is going on down here?" And the scale of this thing is just mind-blowing. In just a handful of minutes, $1 trillion in value, poof, it just evaporated, wiped clean off the books of America's biggest companies. It was like a financial black hole just opened up on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average tanked by almost 1,000 points. That's a drop of nearly 9%. Now, to give you some perspective on that, today, a drop of just 7% is enough to trigger circuit breakers that halt all trading. So yeah, this was an absolute catastrophic nosedive. But here's the craziest part. The whole thing, from the start of the plunge to an almost full recovery, took just 36 minutes. It was this violent, shocking, and incredibly fast financial storm. And that's exactly why they call it the flash crash. And if you think the overall market drop was nuts, what happened to individual stocks was just completely bonkers. Take a solid blue chip company like Accenture worth $30 billion. Its stock price fell from $40 to a single penny. A penny! Meanwhile, Apple stock briefly shot up to $100,000 a share. The system wasn't just broken, it was completely hallucinating. So, of course, the big question was, who did this? The investigation eventually led them to the most unlikely suspect you could imagine. Navinder Singh Sarao, this quiet, lone wolf trader, working out of his parents' house in a suburb of London. Not exactly the Wall Street mastermind you'd picture, right? And here's where it gets really suspicious. The timing. Right before the entire market imploded, Sarao casually logged off, having already made almost $1 million in profit that day alone. You can see why that would immediately put a giant red flag next to his name for investigators. Now, this guy, Sarao, he wasn't some amateur. He was a seriously gifted trader. He'd already turned a $2 million nest egg into $15 million by making some killer bets during the 2008 bank bailouts. But by 2009, he started to feel like the game was rigged against him by this new kid on the block, high-frequency trading algorithms, bots that were just way faster than any human could ever be. So he got frustrated. He felt like these super fast bots were always one step ahead. So he decided, you know what? If he can't beat them, join them. But he wanted to take it even further. He didn't just want to play their game. He wanted to hack the whole system. And he found his secret weapon in, of all places, a New York Times article. It described this tactic called spoofing. It's an illegal strategy, and it's pretty simple, really. You place huge orders to buy or sell that you have absolutely no intention of actually following through on. The whole point is to trick the market, to create a fake sense of supply or demand that you can then use to your advantage. So Sarao had a custom trading program built to pull this off perfectly. Here's how it worked. First, his bot would flood the market with thousands of fake sell orders. This is called layering. That creates this illusion that tons of people are selling, which pushes the price down. Then step 3, he'd swoop in with his real money and buy up everything at that new artificially low price. And finally, step 4, he'd instantly cancel all those fake orders, the price would snap back up, and he'd walk away with the tidy profit. And we're not talking about a small operation here. The scale was massive. At some points on the day of the flash crash, Sarao's fake trades accounted for 20%, a full 1/5 of all the sell orders in the entire S&P 500 futures market. He was single-handedly creating this huge fake weight on the market. So that brings us to the trillion-dollar question, literally. Did this one guy from his bedroom in London actually cause the entire U.S. stock market to crash? Well, the official investigation came to a pretty surprising conclusion.
It turns out, while Sarao's spoofing was definitely making the market more fragile that day, he was absolutely adding fuel to the fire. He didn't actually light the match. The official report pointed the finger at a completely different trigger.
Investigators were able to trace the very beginning of the crash back to one single, totally legitimate trade. At 2:32 p.m., a big mutual fund started a huge sell program to get rid of thousands of futures contracts. That was the first domino to fall.
And when I say huge, I mean it. The order was to sell 75,000 E-mini contracts. The total value? A whopping $4.1 billion. Now, you can't just dump an order that big on the market at once. You'd crash the price yourself. The fund knew this, of course, so they used an automated algorithm to sell it off slowly over time. And this right here is where everything went catastrophically wrong. The algorithm's goal was simple: sell contracts equal to 9% of whatever the trading volume was in the last minute. But it had a fatal flaw. It was programmed to think that high trading volume meant there were lots of real buyers ready to scoop up the shares. And even worse, it had no price or time limits. It was told to just sell, no matter how low the price got.
So you see the problem, right? High-frequency trading bots, including Saraos, were creating tons of trading volume, all this HFT noise. But it was just an illusion. There were very few real buyers underneath all that activity providing actual liquidity. The mutual fund's dumb algorithm saw all this noise, thought it was a hungry market, and started selling faster and faster into a market that had no one to sell to. An order that was supposed to take 5 hours got dumped in just 20 minutes, and that's what broke the market. So what happened after all the dust settled? Well, the fallout from the flash crash had some pretty major consequences, both for Navinder Sarao and for the entire financial system. After a really long investigation, Sarao was finally arrested in 2015. And they threw the book at him. He was facing 22 criminal charges and a potential prison sentence of 380 years. But in a wild twist, after he cooperated and basically taught prosecutors how market manipulation works, he ended up with just 1 year of house arrest. But the crash was a massive wake-up call for everyone. It led to a bunch of new rules, like the Dodd-Frank Act, which for the first time actually defined spoofing in the law and banned it. It also taught regulators some incredibly important lessons: that giant automated orders can be really dangerous, that high trading volume does not mean the market is healthy, and just how deeply connected all these different markets really are. But, Sarao's story is still really controversial. A lot of people in finance believe he was basically made a scapegoat. I mean, spoofing was happening all over Wall Street. It was kind of a dirty little secret. And to a lot of people, it seemed pretty unfair to make an example of this one guy. When you remember that after the massive 2008 financial crisis, only one single banker in the US went to jail. And that really leaves us with some big questions to think about. Was Navinder Sarao this evil genius who crashed the market on his own? Or was he just a convenient fall guy for a deeply flawed system? And maybe the most important question of all, with markets now faster and more automated than ever before, have we actually done enough to stop the next, maybe even bigger, flash crash from happening all over again?